Dr. Jazz.
I just wanted to ask you, like,
Jazz.
about curiouser and curious. How did you?
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, how did you come up with that? I mean, you know, I've checked how much work you've done in the last 40 years or even more, and you've been extremely prolific as a composer, right? I mean, what's your?
I like to write.
Yeah, what's your story there? How do you? Let's say this project, like Alice in Wonderland, connected, but how do you usually start with a project regarding writing and composing? What's your?
Oh, good. That's a good question. Well, you know, years ago when I was full-time in New York City, you know, I would just sit and kind of write. I had a place in Brooklyn where people could play every day. So I had jam sessions every day at my house. And that's how I met a lot of people in New York, because just everybody wanted to come and play. So it kind of built over many years to the point where just lots of, you know, great famous people were coming to my house just to play some music, you know. So I would just simply be writing music for the guys I knew that were coming, that they would like to play, instead of playing standards, which, you know, we still did some. But so I just thought, okay, let me write music for so-and-so, whoever it might be, you know, whether it was Levano or Billy Drews or whatever, Paul McCandless, or, I mean, all kinds of people would come, really, Warren Marsh, or really fascinating musicians, you know. So I would try to write music that would fit maybe something they would like. That was part of it. And the other thing was to challenge myself. When I first got to New York, I knew a lot, but not enough, not at the New York level. I was living in Minneapolis before I came to New York.
Oh, okay.
So I said, okay, I've got to challenge myself with different, whatever, time signatures and different kinds of harmony and, you know, more and more complicated things that I didn't know enough about. So I also was writing for me to have to be able to learn some of this stuff. So I'd write compositions that were a little too hard for me, let's say. So I could then also, you know, just work on this stuff.
Yeah, sure.
So that was the beginning way of me kind of composing, though I've always composed since I was a kid. Then recently, in the past, since I've been here in Austria about 20 years, I started writing partially for different groups that I was in, but also I discovered that it was easier for me if I had a theme, an idea. You know, so I looked to my past, things that touched me, things I was interested in, like that was Alice in Wonderland. I remember reading it, and the fantasy of the story kind of led to my feeling of, oh, I could write some interesting kind of music to fit the story. You know, wild, kind of crazy things happened and stuff like that. It was also very sweet and very beautiful. And so it gave me a focus, an idea that I could start from. And I've been writing like that for years and years. I wrote a duo program from the Nine Muses, for example. So I wrote this, you know, it was a trumpet player and myself. I wrote the music for it, and whatever. So I was trying to find these kind of thematic ideas.
Yes.
I have another group here, a string quartet and a jazz quartet combined.
Oh, wow, really? Oh, wow. I didn't know.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And for that, I wrote two different programs. One was the 7 Deadly Sins. So I wrote a piece for every one of the sins. And the other one, I wrote music for Edgar Allan Poe, who also I loved his writing.
Really? Oh, wow.
It was really fascinating, also very, very wild. And, you know, the music was very crazy, you know. So it allowed me, again, another kind of focus for the music. And so when these are all recordings we've made for all this stuff that I'm talking about. So, and so on. I mean, it's just this new recording I did with Michael Musalami, the guitarist from Playscape, where I have all my recordings. Our latest one, he said, well, what should we do? And I suggested an idea. I said, well, let's do like the pictures at Mussorgsky's, you know, pictures at an exhibition, right? I said, so let's take whatever, 8, 9, 10 pieces, and we'll paint pictures of each of these, whatever the paintings were. And then we decided that we would each pick 4 or 5 different of our heroes of our music, our piano heroes, and his guitar heroes. And then we wrote pieces and improvised, lots of kind of freer type improvisation for these people. And then in between, we made little snippets like Mussorgsky, where you're walking in the museum from one painting to the next.
Yeah.
So there's a little, these 30-second, 1 minute little, to get to the next painting. So that was our most recent kind of idea.
Oh.
So it's been just like this kind of, I don't know, it gives me more inspiration. During the COVID, at first I was very depressed, and I just sat home and did watch TV like everybody. I had no gigs, everything was canceled. I lost, I don't know how many gigs last year, 60, 70 gigs, and it was just like a disaster. So at first I couldn't do anything. I was immobilized. And then finally I kicked myself in the butt, and I said, okay, I got to start writing. I'm home, I have time, let's write some music. So I started a new group, 9-piece group. And it's I just said, okay, I want to put together a completely interesting ensemble. So it's with a flute player, a guy who plays clarinet and bass clarinet, somebody who plays soprano and tenor, viola, two cellos, and then rhythm section.
Oh, beautiful.
So it's like a really unusual kind of sound, right? And so I wrote 12 pieces for different famous books that I enjoyed over my life.
Oh, wow. So there's a theme always. Yeah.
There's always, that's kind of my way of writing in general. Yeah. And not always, but often that's just, I don't know, it's just a way to get things going. I have a new CD coming out next, it should be, I think in May, he said.
Oh, really?
April, May. And it's called 88 Butterfly. And 88 Butterfly is a type of butterfly. Mm-hmm. When I was a kid, I remember that, I don't know how old I was, maybe 7, 8 years old, a swarm of monarch butterflies, these orange and black butterflies. Yeah. There were thousands and thousands of them, came through my yard in my street in this area where I lived. Wow. And it was just like this magical moment. And from that, I got this idea, well, I want to write music for butterflies. So I wrote a dozen pieces for each different kind of butterfly from around the world.
Oh, beautiful.
So this album's called 88 Butterflies. So this is another one, music I wrote during during this COVID lockdown or in quarantine.
How do you start usually?
We recorded it. Sorry.
No, how do you start usually writing? Like with a melody or harmony or the first, like from...
different. I mean, I've tried all those things, like everybody. You start with the bass line, you start with a vamp, you start with the melody. Yeah. I've written songs in the car where I'm just driving and, just write the melody in my head and then write it down when I get home. Sometimes I write out a particular progression. Sometimes I've really tried every method. I ask other composers sometimes, well, how do they start? And everybody has a little different story,
Yeah.
So I just, I've tried different things. And over the years, in the beginning, I think when I was in New York full time, I used to just kind of like, wait for the, please inspire me somewhere. The muse, come down and give me an idea.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then over the years, I decided that there's an easier way to compose, a much easier way to compose. And that is you start with a seed of an idea, not just a visual image of a story or whatever, but also of, okay, I feel like writing a piece in 9, and it's going to start in the key of F minor, and I'm going to start with a wild bass line in a really unusual bass line.
That's really smart, yeah. Man,
and then you go forward. It's a lot easier to just come up with ideas for me that way. So that's often how I start with, maybe I'll say, okay, I'm going to write a free piece, only melody, no harmony, blah, 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 like an ornette kind of piece.
Yeah.
It's just, I really try to find different ways to move forward that start with a little something that helps me instead of, please give me an idea.
That's smart, actually. Yeah. Yeah.
And it tends to work. It really goes much faster. I come up with more ideas.
Yeah.
Much, much quicker. It just leads me down the path of at least getting going.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. I've been doing the snippets, like every day when I come up, just write down like 3 bars, put it away, and then
stuff like that. Yeah,
it helps. Yeah, or like a tune per day. I had like during COVID this I said like okay, I'll write the tune per day, whatever it is. If it's like 4 bars, if it's like you said 3 pages, whatever. Just that you get it going. So That's important.
Exactly. Well, do you know this Calendario del Son by Hermeto Pascual?
I know Fermetto. Yeah.
Yeah, well, he did the same. He did for 1 year. He wrote a piece every day, and it's in a book. You can buy the book. I bought it. I forget where, but it's the same idea. He just wrote a piece every day, and it's amazing. It's some wild music, as you know. He's pretty wild.
Yeah, he was pretty wild. Yeah. Incredible.
I mean, I did it for about a month. That same kind of, say like you just sit, write a piece a day, and hope it comes out okay. And it was funny, but I was surprised. I would say more than half were really good pieces.
Yeah,
almost that forcing yourself, and you come up with ideas.
Yeah, it's true. It's like just that if you know the tools, like you said, it's in a way it's easy to write a tune in.
Absolutely.
7. It's just like what comes next and
what comes up, and you just realize, well, because I've had so many different experiences with African bands, with Brazilian bands, with that you just well, let me try something like that. You try another style, another concept. I played with 3 players, and I played with old guys, the old standard style or whatever. You just say, okay, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try that, and anyway, so. There's a lot of choices. How about that? There's just so many choices, and if you have a lot of experiences, you just grab a different idea each day.
Yeah, it's like cooking. You have all the herbs, and they're just like kind of the same idea. Yeah. But Peter, I wanted to ask you. You mentioned the old guys, and I wanted to go just back, let's say, late 60s, early 70s, when who were like these first guys that got you inspired for improvisation and jazz? Do you remember that when you were like a teenager? The records that blew your mind?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I must say that the first recordings I got were John Coltrane's Selflessness and Oscar Peterson Night Train.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So in a sense, that kind of 2 ideas, one very open and more free, and one just swinging like crazy, is how I started hearing the swing. I was around a lot of musicians in my hometown, Racine, Wisconsin, had a lot of great kind of swing type players. So I heard this swing music around me. A lot of my friends, they were musicians. I had a few great drummers around me. I just heard it. And from that record, it kind of took me in that direction as one idea. And then the other thing was this kind of more open, about the emotion of the music and the soulfulness of the music and another kind of focus. Both were equally great to me. And they were my first real, listening inspirations. But I had another experience when I was a teenager. I went to one of those jazz camps.
Oh, yeah.
The summer jazz camp thing, right? So I went to this place in Wisconsin, where I'm from, and a lot of my friends in the big band went, and the main teacher was Gary Burton.
Wow.
It was one of those Jamie Aebersold camps, actually. It was, sponsored by Jamie Aebersold, right? So he was there too, teaching. And but the main guy was Gary Burton. And it was a great piano teacher, Dan Hurley, who was a great piano teacher from North Texas. And there was a student there, and this is where the story is leading to. He was an assistant. So, and it was Lyle Mays.
Really? Oh man! Wow.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
So Lyle Mays was just in college. He hadn't gone to North Texas, where he became a big hero of everybody, and where he met Pat Metheny was from there. But it was before he went there. So he was just a young guy, and one day it was a lunch break, and I was also a bass player because I was hoping to play piano there, but there was too many piano players, never enough bass players, right? So I got stuck playing the bass and in the big bands and the stuff and all the ensembles, which was fine. It's okay. I like playing bass too. Anyway, so I was in the big practice room it was like a big the orchestra room, where the orchestra would rehearse. So. And I just went in and I went to practice right after I ate my lunch. So I started just practicing a little bit. And in walks Lyle and the piano teacher, Dan Hurley. Dan sits at the piano. Lyle, who is also a great drummer, sat at the drums. And they said, let's play. And I'm like, oh, okay, what do we play? And they said, oh, let's just play free. And I'm like, I'd never played free in my life, right? I had no idea even what to do. So they said, just close your eyes and play. Okay. So now let me set this up. So the room is I was practicing in the dark, right? It was just kind of a dark room. And I just, they walked in, didn't turn on the lights. We sat down, and then they said, just play, okay. So we started to play, my eyes were closed, and it just became like, I don't know, another world, another universe, another time, another everything. And we just kept playing. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just playing and playing. And then all of a sudden we finished. I opened my eyes, the lights were on, and every student of the school was in the room. I hadn't been aware of anything at all except being deep inside of this music, right? It was my first experience of going, oh my God, music is something really deep. And that was the moment I realized that's what I want to do. I want to do whatever that is. I want to do it again and again, as much as possible, because that was the coolest experience I ever had.
Man.
Yeah. So anyway, that was my high school inspiration, the recordings, those couple recordings that got me started in these different directions, and then getting a chance to play this kind of open, deep, feeling of music.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's
funny,
my beginning.
Because that's how you still are now, like going into open free improvisation and composition. So it's gonna
and also just that, I'm one of those guys. I'm not satisfied playing one thing, one style, one way.
Yeah, that's good.
I like doing more free music. I like no chords. But I also like, playing with Stan Getz for a year. I liked playing, whatever, Benny Golson and, some of the older cats. It was for me just great experiences to play that kind of old school, just swing, just swing.
Yeah, definitely.
And then everything in between. So when I was in New York, I started to do, the funk thing. I got the job playing with Fred Wesley.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that. Yeah.
And led to, Maceo Parker. And so that kind of, these different worlds kept coming at me. And I loved them all. They were fantastic experiences for me.
Yeah.
So that kind of attitude helped me to try a lot of different things. I loved ECM music in New York, which at the time was not exactly, like an acceptable kind of thing to like. That it was kind of wimpy. New York wanted to be, swing,
rough,
hardcore, not so light and easy or whatever, not so ethereal or
Lyle Mason. You mentioned Lyle.
Yeah, so.
But yeah, I know what you mean.
I love that music too, so I was trying to find people to do that with as well, and also with compositional. I liked all of those different kind of concepts.
Yeah.
And so that idea then has led to me being here, which even opened up another kind of door. So I've now gotten into many other kinds of things because of that open-minded that are outside of jazz, that also I bring jazz into my jazz world and some jazz into that world. So I play with a lot of African musicians and, different things that I wouldn't get the chance in New York to do.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Also, a lot of classical guys are over here, Austria.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the history, the heritage.
Of classical music. So I've gotten some of that kind of experience too, and writing for these kind of more people who can read anything kind of.
Yeah.
So I like that open-minded idea of just embracing everything,
Yeah, it's all music.
Being stuck.
Yeah, that's really good for the creative process also. That you're not like
exactly.
I have to do that, and that's it. Yeah, but
exactly.
Peter, I wanted to ask you. You mentioned Stan Getz, but I want to go a little bit earlier. What triggered your move to New York? I think it's 1980, right, or something like that.
Yeah, 1980.
What was the main trigger that you decided to do that? Actually.
Well, I guess because I knew everything was in New York that I wanted to do. The people, just the dream. I had moved. I was going to university in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, with a nice university, which is actually where Lyle Mays first began. So kind of about an hour and a half from Minneapolis. So after I graduated, let me explain this. Just before I graduated, in walks, and you got to remember, this is a pretty. How do I say it nicely? A lily white school, right? You didn't see too many people except a bunch of white people. So one day in walks a very handsome black man. And I go, ooh, who's that? And he walks up to me and he said, "Are you Peter Madsen?" And I said, yeah. And he said, "I'm Anthony Cox."
Oh,
I play the
really?
bass.
Oh man.
And he said, you have a practice room around here? I said, yeah, sure. He said, let's go play. So we went to a practice room, we played, and that was the beginning of a friendship that has lasted, of course, till today,
Yeah.
And he was living in Minneapolis, and he was just checking out the school if he maybe wanted to get a degree, in music education or whatever, so he was there just checking the school out. Well, he ended up not doing that, and he just kind of went back to Minneapolis. And so he suggested, hey, why don't you come to Minneapolis? Also, a few of the other guys I had gone to school with in Eau Claire had moved to Minneapolis because it has a really nice music scene. Yeah. Especially back then, there was a lot of clubs, a lot of different kinds of styles. There's some, kind of loft-like places playing free, and there, swing jobs and jobs in hotels, and there's really a lot of work. In fact, I moved to Minneapolis. That was my first step from school. I was playing every day. I mean, every afternoon I had a rehearsal or jam set. Every day I had 2 jobs, 2 every night. A solo piano job for 3 hours, starting at 5 till 8. And then I had a quartet job with a singer and a trio, in a hotel for another 4 hours. So I was working 7 hours a night. So my chops were getting good. I was learning tunes. And it was a good band, good rhythm section, and playing with Anthony in the daytime and other great musicians there. And it was really an amazing time for me. But we dreamed of, even Anthony and I, we just kept dreaming of going to New York. Sure. And our big dream, let me tell you, our big dream was to go and play at Bradley's.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So, Bradley's was the big duo place in New York. Everybody played. And, so we would practice, a couple times a week, only duo, just he and I, to try to, get ideas together of how to play in such a place, duo music without drums, and, but our problem was we liked Ornette, and we liked, things that you wouldn't normally hear at Bradley's. You tended to hear more standards, and, which was great. I mean, I love going there. It was a great place. Anyway, so we would kind of practice and imagine ourselves going to New York and playing, some duo stuff. That was our dream. And actually, it ended up happening, not at Bradley's, but at a place called 1/5 Avenue, which also had some solos and duo things every night. And I met a bunch of people there. A lot of musicians would come in and check us out, and so we were playing the stuff we had practiced in Minneapolis there at 1/5 Avenue.
You moved at the same time?
Yeah, he moved about 2 or 3 months after me.
Oh, okay.
So he came and then stayed with me. I found a place in Brooklyn. It was a great place. The only other people in the building were musicians. So nobody cared, if you practiced or had a jam session or whatever. So sometimes in the building, there'd be just this other guys, they had a jam session, and I would at the same time. People would go back and forth. It was really a cool jazz house. It was really great on the corner of President and Smith. It was fantastic.
Man, who were the first connections then you made in New York, like in 1980? Like Anthony, I guess, was the only one, but who were the first people you started playing with?
Well, I mean, I think, Anthony was the first guy that really helped me to get into meeting a lot of these other people that I met later. But I started just kind of guys in the neighborhood, like Jeff Williams. I don't know if you remember Jeff Williams.
Yeah, sure. Man,
he lived just down the street. A great saxophone player, Jed Levy, lived right across the street practically. He was down there. Tim Horner was just down there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Tons and tons of really great musicians were just around. So John Riley used to come a lot, or Elliot Zigman used to come a lot. If I start thinking about it, man, just hundreds.
Everyone, man.
Everyone started to come. Yeah. Bob Mintzer was coming over. Paul McCandless would all come over. It just was like endless. And also I started buying some recording equipment. And so I would start doing recordings for people. So this also drew more people. Abercrombie would come over, and we had a group together. It was Anthony, Abercrombie, Elliot Zigman, and me. And Jack Walrath. He used to come.
Is this recorded somewhere?
Yeah, I have tapes of it somewhere.
Oh man, come on.
And whatever. I mean, and guys would just come over. Hey, even if I wasn't playing, they would say, "Oh, can you make a little demo for me or something?" Kenny Warner would come over. I mean, tons and tons of people. Mark Johnson was over. I can't remember, just it's too many people to remember. John Riley was over almost every week. And then, it's like, oh, can I invite so-and-so over? Can I bring somebody? It just became this, oh, can I have so-and-so? And it just grew into all kinds of people would come.
That's amazing.
It was really a fascinating time. And that was like about 7 years it lasted until I moved.
Wow,
so,
man.
And it was pretty much every day, almost every day.
Yeah, but that's how you make connections. Yeah, that's so important.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing.
Exactly. So those are the guys that I started getting gigs with. That's how I started to spread out like that. And little by little, I started working with singers at first. I got a gig playing at it's the tip of my tongue. It'll come to it. I don't think about it. But it was like 3 years, 5 nights a week. It was Phil Bowler, bass player.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
At the time he was playing. He had just stopped playing with Winton's band. He was in that very early Winton band with the Marcellus brothers, and it was Kenny Kirkland was.
Kenny Kirkland was in it. Yeah.
And so Phil Bowler was the bassist. So he and I were playing duo with this singer, but she didn't always sing. She'd rather just come up and sing a couple songs. So we really got to play duo every night, 5 hours a night.
Wow, man.
It was crazy. I'm telling you, 4 1-hour sets, 5 hours every night from 10 o'clock till 3 in the morning.
Wow,
for $50. $50 we made. Woohoo!
Yeah, but every night, come on.
It was a nice steady gig, but it was pretty crazy.
Man, that's a lot, yeah.
That was a nice gig I had for a while. I mean, that was New York back then. There were more chances to play these little clubs where jazz was a cool thing. They had a little upright piano. Smoking was still allowed. Oh man, I would get home and be like,
sure. I remember those days, yeah. Man.
Anyway,
like
those are
everyone tells me that, like the 70s and beginning of the 80s.
Yeah.
They played everywhere. Like there was so many gigs to be played. Yeah.
So many gigs. Yeah, a lot of different gigs. When I start thinking about it, it was a great time.
Yeah.
It was really, really a fun time to be in New York.
Yeah. So sounds like for jazz. Yeah, that's the dream then, actually.
Yeah.
And
didn't make any money, but there were a lot of gigs.
You were gigging, yeah. Well, the rents were lower also. So.
But why people still go to New York? You go to meet people who are from other places. And then
exactly.
Then you start getting the tours around the world, and that's really what happened. Especially for me, was meeting Japanese cats.
Oh, really?
So my first kind of big touring stuff came from meeting a couple of Japanese players. One was Kyoto Fujiwara, who was in New York from the mid-'70s, and he left New York like me around 20 years ago, moved back to Japan. But he was in New York. He was playing with Andrew Hill. He was playing with Clifford Jordan. He was playing with Horace Silver. He was playing a lot of great gigs. And he quit all those gigs, all these great gigs, because he decided he only wanted to play his music his way. So he started a group. Would be like 80, let me think about it, 84, 85, something like that it began. Maybe 84. I think we met in 83 and started. He was one of the guys coming to my house, playing at the jam sessions. And I think it was right there, 84 maybe. Anyway, the saxophone player was Kenny Garrett. So it was Kenny, a Japanese drummer named Shunsuke Fuke, a great drummer. And Kyoto Fujiwara was his music, and this kind of he was a wild writer, very unusual composer. And so we had that band together for quite a few years. And then he would add horn players, and Thomas Chapin was in the band for a while. It was 4 horns.
Wow.
Sam Furness was in the band, Alan Wong, so many great things. And out of that, I met a lot of other cats. Like, I don't know if you ever knew Fred Ho.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the baritone.
Fred.
No,
like
Afro-Asian, all the horns. Sure.
Yeah, Fred, the Afro-Asian Music Ensemble.
Yeah.
So I joined that band. So I met a lot of all kinds of, Royal Hartigan, kind of a world music drummer, great drummer. He was in there, and Kyoto was the bass player. So it led me to a lot of things. So, we were on tour with Kenny and Kyoto a few times in Japan.
Oh, wow.
So that was my beginning time of going to Japan. And since then, I met so many people. I've toured in Japan over 60 times now.
Really? Oh, man. Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I was busy doing a lot of Japanese things. So things like that. So anyway, that's why I think a lot of people go to New York too. It's not, the jobs are still, $70, $50, $75 if you're lucky, It's just to meet the connections of people who you can go other places.
Yeah.
How I met, the Fred Wesley world, that world opened up to me and became kind of my main world of being able to tour from Fred.
Yeah. How did the connection with Fred happen, by the way? I mean, how did that start?
Like a lot of my connections, Stan Getz connection was Anthony Cox. Anthony was playing with Stan, and it was Larry Willis was the pianist, but he was getting very unreliable for different reasons. And so Stan decided to make a change. So he was looking for a piano player, and Anthony said, I know just the guy for you. And he recommended me. Stan calls me up.
Was that like an audition or something?
About it. He
please,
calls me and
how did it
this
happen?
is Stan. I'm like, Stan? Who? Stan Getz. I'm like, really? No. What? And we had a little chat, right? And he said, you have a passport? And I like, yeah. Can you leave on Friday? Like,
it's always the same.
Yeah.
I love this, the passports.
And then he says to me, bring some music.
Seriously?
And I said, what music? You mean my music? Or, yeah, whatever you want to play. So I'm like, okay. It was just a really crazy, so I brought some music and I thought he might like a few of my songs, a couple of unusual monk pieces because I had transcribed, all the monk compositions. I brought some Wayne Shorter because I had transcribed all kinds of Wayne Shorter pieces. And it was, So anyway, Anthony Cox introduced me to Stan. That's how I got that job. He also introduced me to Fred Wesley.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Fred had just done an album with Jerry Allen, who Anthony was playing with. He was also playing with Jerry Allen, right? Yeah. So, and Jerry at the last minute canceled. I don't know why. I think she got a last minute tour or something. And so Anthony calls me up and says, man, are you busy tomorrow? It was really literally that last minute. And he said, come and do this recording, man. You'll have fun. It's right up your alley. It's some jazz, it's some funk, it's some this and that. It's, Bill Stewart's on drums and it's Maceo Parker and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what? So I went in, I played the gig, I did the recording, turned out great. They loved what I was doing. And a couple months later, Fred calls me and says, hey, Pete, you want to go on tour? We're going to promote the album. And I'm like, oh, okay, great. So that's how that did. Anthony brought me in at the last minute to that as well.
And you played with Fred a couple of years, right? Or
I've been playing with Fred for 30 years now.
Man, wow.
I've been his piano keyboard guy for 30 years.
Man.
That's led to a lot of amazing travels. And I mean, really, because he's not really, he's a jazz player. He loves jazz. How he grew up. He was a big, his father had a big band and all that kind of stuff. So he's in his heart, he's a jazz player. But like a lot of jazz players, you figure out how you can make some money.
Sure.
Jazz is never a money-making, except for a handful of people. It's not really a money-making adventure, right? So you have to find other ways to, make some money. So Fred, like a lot of jazz people, got into doing more funky music. He got blues gigs and kind of, soul gigs and, that kind of stuff. And then he got the James Brown gig, right? And became the musical director. And that's how he met, Maceo and Pee Wee and all that, the cats, right? So because of that, he's not this jazz guy. He's from this other world. Everybody thinks of him as this this funky trombone player, which he is. He's the funkiest trombone player in the world, no question.
Yeah.
So of course, his gigs, right, can be a lot more big, a lot, giant kind of venues, and also just because he's become famous in that world, we really travel everywhere, from Australia to all over Africa to, the Philippines to Moscow to Israel to you name it, We've just traveled the world. Fred Wesley has been my way to see the world that I wouldn't have gotten a chance playing with most jazz groups.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So it's been really, really a great blessing for me to know these guys, and they're all great musicians. The band is
sure.
killing.
Yeah,
it's just a killing band, and almost everybody in the band is basically a jazz kind of player. That's where their heart is, in a sense, you know. But we're happy to play this music too because it sounds so good when you have a bunch of guys together that like doing
funky,
it,
grooving and swinging. Sure, I mean it's
Oh man, that's fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. But what you're in Europe now, of course, in Austria. But like, when was the first time you went to Europe? Was it with Stan? Or
yeah, actually, I think that was the first tour. I mean, I had been to Europe before, but that was the first
like a touring musician
music tour. Yeah, it was with Stan.
How was that like for you the first time? I mean, that experience.
Oh, that was incredible. I mean, you know, just the excitement of playing with him, of course, alone was just, I was so overwhelmed, basically. And I remember the very first gig we did was in Lyon, France.
Oh, really?
And we walked on stage. We walked on stage, and the audience rose to their feet, screaming and pounding their feet and screaming and clapping. And it went on for like 10 minutes. They wouldn't let us play. And we just kept going and going. Like we're looking at each other. What? We haven't played a note. And these guys are going crazy, right? So we're like, okay, finally Stan is like, okay, let us play. You know? And so he calms the audience down. And then I forget what this first song, some standard he called. And you know, you think of Stan Getz like as a, you know, fa kind of player, right? Well, I learned very fast that's just a lie. The first tune, right? You know, in the old days, some of the cats used to count, you know, we count off the tune today, you know, 1, 2, right? Okay. He counted off like some of the old cats, stomping their foot on the ground. Boom, boom, a boom, 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 right? And then Rath, I'm like, whoa, what was that? And I realized, okay, man, this guy is not fooling around. He came out to play, right? I mean, seriously, play hard. And we were just burning. It was Terry Lynn Carrington, Anthony Cox, and myself.
Oh man, what a band.
And it was really smoking from the first minute, right? And we played all these tunes, and some of the tunes I brought, and he had a big love for Thad Jones compositions.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so he had a bunch of handwritten Thad Jones pieces that we would play, that Thad had just given to Stan, you know, that he just wrote for Stan to play.
Oh, that's amazing.
And just, you know, all kinds of stuff. Really, a lot of interesting music he wanted to do. And man, he never looked at charts. He just knew everything. I think he had a photographic memory, basically, and the ear was amazing. So he just could play whatever, you know, called a tune and could play it, you know, that kind of.
That's incredible. Yeah,
that was fun. So that was my first trip to Europe. That was the first day, the first experience. And I'm like, oh my God.
That's it, right?
And we were walking off the stage, and Stan had a manager always, you know, had taken care of him and, you know, walking and carrying his instruments and stuff. We were walking off the stage, and I heard him turn around to his helper and say, "I think we found ourselves a piano player." So I'm like, oh God, thank you.
You got a gig, yeah.
So that was my first day in Europe on a tour with Stan Getz, and it's a great memory, really.
Yeah, amazing. That's beautiful. Yeah, it's wow.
It was fun. Yeah, it was really exciting.
Yeah. Otherwise, I wanted to ask you. You know, talking about Fred Wesley, you kind of started playing with him like early 90s, right? How did Snuggling Snakes happen then? Like you becoming a band leader, you know, because it features an amazing crew of players. I mean, of course, Anthony and Louis on drums. That's wow. Yeah. And like, I don't know, a 9-year-old Chris Potter, I'm kidding, like, who's burning on that hodgepodge, I think, tune like crazy, like already. But like, how did that record happen? When was the moment for you to become?
Yeah, well, okay. The first connection is that Fred Wesley's recordings were on Minor Music, which is a German record label.
Yeah.
So as the owner got to know us, Stefan Miner is his name. As he got to know us, he found each of us attractive in some way that he could put out recordings on his label of our, you know, he'd ask us, oh, do you have your own group, or do you have something you'd like to do, or, you know, because he liked what we were doing, and he was a jazz fan too. It wasn't just, you know, funky. He liked jazz. He wanted jazz, you know. Jerry Allen at the time was on his label, just to give you an example of the kind of people he was interested in. So the connection is with Stefan Miner and Miner Music, and he approached me and said, "Hey, would you like to do some kind of recording? And here's your budget. See who you can get."
Oh wow, really?
So
oh, wow.
yeah, so it started. Of course, I asked Anthony right away because he already knew my music somewhat. And he said, "Oh man, I would love to record with Louis Nash. I haven't really had a chance to record with him." I said, "Okay, great. I'll ask him." So I contacted Louis, and then at the time, now this is interesting. I was playing more with I had been playing with Kenny Garrett. So when I first met him in that mid 80s, he was not famous yet. He was just starting to get going.
Yeah.
He was at the time he had joined that, what was it called? Out of the Blue?
Oh yeah, like when Steve Wilson later joined and all these guys. And
exactly. So Kenny, that's how he got his first kind of big, and it kind of grew very quickly from there. So I knew him before, and we had stayed in contact, and he was actually calling me for his gigs. Like when Mulgrew Miller couldn't do the gigs or something, he would call me and say, "Hey, can you come and do these gigs?" So I had a connection with Kenny. So anyway, when Stefan Miner offered this, the first thought was, I'm going to call Kenny. And so I called him up and I talked to him, and he said, "Man," he just signed with some big label, I don't remember which one. And he said, "Man, I'd love to do it. Man, wow, with Anthony and Louis Nash, oh man, that sounds great." He's like, "But I can't."
Yeah.
And he said, "There's good and bad." I don't know if I should say these things, but I'll say it anyway.
No, but yeah, sure. We know how it is. I mean,
you get controlled by the company, sure, by agents, by lawyers, by, blah, blah. He said, "I can't do it. They won't let me."
Yeah.
So then I'm like, okay, now what do I do? So and here's how this is interesting, how I met Chris Potter. This group with Kyoto Fujiwara I was talking about, we had a gig and Kenny couldn't do the gig. So Kenny sent in Chris Potter as his substitute.
Oh, wow.
So Chris Potter comes in to do the gig, and he's, this little looking, kid, and he starts playing. I just kind of turned, I went, "Oh my God, who was that?" And he had his alto with him, his tenor, his soprano, his flute. I mean, it's like he had his arsenal. I'm like, who is this kid? And he played truly unbelievable. I was just like, after 2 minutes, I'm like, okay, this guy's going to be famous. Not even a question. Anyway, so that's how I got to meet Chris, was from that gig, and that was probably in '88 or something like that. I don't remember exactly.
Wow. Yeah.
So anyway, so then I think I saw. I'm trying to remember how I saw him again. Also, like maybe in 1990 or 81. I don't remember exactly the year, but I was starting to play with the Mingus Big Band. Through who got me into Steve Johns, was playing drums with them at the time, and Andy McKee was the bass player, who became a good friend of mine, became part of my trio later. Anyway, so I think Chris played on one of those or a couple of those gigs, so I reconnected with him a little bit. Who we were, and so when I got this offer, Kenny Garrett couldn't do it. I called Chris to do it. So, and Chris was like, "Oh yeah, great. What instrument do you want me to bring?" I said, "Bring them all." So
incredible, yeah.
So that's how that came about. And then at the time, my friend Rudi Berger, who's from Vienna, the violinist, right? He was playing, who I'd been playing on tour with, one of the first guys bringing me to Austria back in 88, 89. I think it was 89. I don't remember exactly, 88, 89. And he had gotten the gig with Toninho Horta.
Oh yeah. I love him then. Yeah, such a player.
One of the greatest, it's Pat Metheny's hero.
Sure.
That's who Pat Metheny idolized himself over, was Toninho Horta. Toninho had that sound that Pat Metheny stole. I mean, there's a lot of stories that Toninho's a little, not angry, but a lot of people come up to him and say, "Hey, man, you sound like Pat Metheny." And he's like, "Pat Metheny sounds like me. Sorry." Yeah. Anyway, so and Rudi said, "Oh, you want me to ask Toninho if he would come in and play a song or two on your album? Because he's in town in New York doing another recording." I said, "Oh man, are you kidding me?" "Oh yes, please." So that's how Toninho got on the record, and Rudi's also on one cut as well. Yeah. Oh, wow. So that's how that whole band was put together. It's kind of unusual way, but it turned out great. It was really for me a a crazy, amazing experience to do my own music and find things to do and play with these great players. You know?
Yeah, what a band. I mean, what a crew of musicians you had on that one. I mean, it's really,
yeah, it was something.
It's like, man, really. But
really, me too. That's what I said. Really.
No, it's really incredible. I mean,
but it was a good start.
90s were crazy for you, right? Like, because in a way, if sometimes you know, I did this talk, I don't know, with Randy Brecker, right? And he was telling me about the 70s.
Yeah.
You know, or some of these guys who he had like recorded, I don't know, in a month, 60 albums. I'm exaggerating, but I had trillions of gigs, writing and everything. And I look at your albums, like, you know, you did your own stuff, Fred Wesley stuff. And I guess the Mario Pavone stuff started also back then, right?
Also, yeah, that's right. Also in the early 90s.
Yeah, how did you meet Mario?
I recorded how many? I don't know, 15 records with him or something.
Yeah,
I don't know, lots.
How did the story with him?
We were playing. We became good friends, and you know, I'd stay at his house all the time. He lived up in Prospect, Connecticut.
Yeah,
and we just did a lot of gigs together. And Thomas Chapin was a part of that scene. The two of them. Thomas was, to me, one of the greatest musicians I ever met.
Man. Such an underrated player. Yeah.
So I was doing things with Thomas. In fact, I joined his band as well. Which also, interesting enough, included Kyoto Fujiwara. It was Thomas, Kyoto, I, and Reggie Nicholson.
Oh yeah, the drummer, man. Yeah. Wow.
From Chicago, and that was the first band with Thomas that I was doing. And I did other, you know, just a lot of other gigs with Thomas and Mario. I mean, just those two guys had me connected to the Knitting Factory world, and how I got to meet, and you know, Malaby and Bernstein and Gerald Cleaver, who became my drummer for my trio. It was Andy McKee and Gerald Cleaver.
Really? I didn't know that. Oh, wow.
We did we have an album with those guys, a live album we did.
Oh, shit. We check this one out. Oh, shit. I don't know.
We did some, it's a really great recording, live at Litchfield.
Okay, to check it out.
Yeah, we had a nice gig, I remember, around that time in Chile. We went down to Chile and had some festival. Yeah. So and then I was just playing a lot with Gerald, with Mario.
Yeah.
I mean, Mario always had great drummers, always fascinating, amazing.
Yeah, like Mike Serin and all these.
Michael was great, and Steve Johns too. Who you know, again, the connection with Mario and Steve. I had known Steve though for years and years, because he was one of those guys coming to my jam sessions in Brooklyn.
Oh, yeah.
Back in the early '80s. Because he lived down the street too. It was like, you know, that area of Brooklyn. I was in Carroll Gardens, right? Just down the street, there was so many. Marty Ehrlich was down the street.
Oh, really?
Tons of people.
Yeah.
Really amazing. I can't even think of name, but there's so literally you could take a stone and hit a house, and hit it, you know, put together a great band.
Yeah.
Oh, it was fabulous.
That's incredible. Yeah.
So anyway, all those connections coming from that, from other things, and how it just kind of branches out in different ways, right?
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, I love that record you did with Thomas. You don't know me. I think it's that one with Tom Harrell. I think it's Tom.
That's with Tom Harrell.
Yeah. Tom. And Reggie on drums. Yeah, also it's
Reggie again in Kyoto. Yeah, no, it's a great record too. Fabulous record. In fact, you know, at the end of Thomas's life, he had put together this new band, and he was trying different people, but it was like Matt Wilson, it was Scott Colley.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. And there's this record out. It's a 3-album set, and 2 of them are with the quartet with Reggie and Kyoto, 2 of the CDs, and 1 CD is with that new group. And that was this, and he was really, at the time when he died, he was talking to Columbia Records, he was talking to Blue Note, everybody was kind of seeing this guy was going to go forward. He also realized his trio was great, but it was pretty wild because it was no harmony really, in a sense. So, and he was also trying to go in the direction of using more harmony. So that's why he wanted a harmony instrument.
Yeah.
And he liked the kind of stuff I was doing. And he and I were both interested in African music, and we would go to record stores together and search world music and whatever, all this kind of. So we had this different kind of image of putting together different sounds into the jazz world, which included harmony and you know, kind of traditional stuff too. So he was writing these really very interesting, difficult compositions that you can hear a couple of them on this recording.
Yeah. It's beautiful. It's funny, like interesting that you really got connected to all these different, like you said, Benedict Factory, and then you have the funk scene with Fred Wesley, and then I wanted to ask you also about One of a Kind, because that was kind of this what you mentioned, this straight ahead world of you know, with Benny Golson as guests and Stanley Turrentine. How did that group happen actually, and what?
Well, that actually was called Three of a Kind.
Three of a Kind. I mean, and it's one of a kind.
Yeah, One of a Kind, Three of a Kind. Three of a Kind started again, same thing, from minor music, from Stefan Miner, and the three of us are still the rhythm section of Fred Wesley.
Okay.
That's how it began. We were the rhythm section. See, after that album with Anthony and Bill Stewart, those guys are too busy. They didn't have time to go out and do tours all the time with one band. They were so busy with a lot of different things that they would rather do, I guess. So Fred had to look for a new drummer and a new bass player. So Anthony at the time had done an album with Jerry Allen, which had two basses on it. I forget the name of it. It's a great record, but it's Anthony on bass and Dwayne Dolphin is on bass. So anyway, Anthony recommends Dwayne Dolphin because Dwayne is a great upright player, swings like nobody else, and he's a great funk player. He's a great electric player. So anyway, that's how Dwayne got into the band. Bruce was, I don't know exactly who he was a friend with, how he got in. I'm not sure. But anyway, so he became the drummer of the group and still is. I mean, we were still the rhythm section.
I didn't know that.
And so it started like this. And Stefan Miner said, hey, you guys, he called me up one day and he said, hey, do you like the Three Sounds? And I said, well, yeah, man, I love the Three Sounds. He knew I was a record collector. I collect LPs. So I have, I don't know, a few thousand LPs, right? And especially the Blue Note stuff, you know, I like straight ahead too, you know. So I had a bunch of those albums of the Three Sounds. So I said, yeah, I love the Three Sounds, man. He said, would you like to do a recording like that? You know, which the idea is you play standards, but everything's a little bluesy, right? That's kind of the concept, right? So I said, okay, great, I love it. Okay, fantastic, let's do it. So that's how that started off. And so we did an album with the trio. We went in and we recorded like 18 songs in like 3 hours. Just one song after the other. No one take, boom, boom, boom. You know, funky, soulful, just standards, really. And it was really, really great. And from that then led to 2 more albums because everybody seemed to like it, right? This kind of easygoing, swing, bluesy, standard music, right? Easier to sell than, you know, Mario stuff or Thomas Chapin stuff, which was really what I loved the most, of course. But at the same time, this was, hey, I'm not going to say no to a cool idea like that. So anyway, it led to the second album, which is with Stanley Turrentine. So then Stanley Turrentine, that was an interesting one because, you know, I went to the recording session. I didn't know Stanley. Stanley had been playing with Dwayne already. Dwayne knew him. They're both from Pittsburgh. Okay, so they knew each other, and he got him in, and I walk in the door, and he looks at me, and I'm carrying the music, you know, and he's looking at me, he says, really tough. Are you the leader? Almost like really mean. And I'm like, no, we're just, you know, we're a cooperative group. We're called Three of a Kind. None of us are the leader. We're all equal, and you can, you know, say what you want or not. We don't have any particular agenda. We just want to make some standard music. Kind of, I said, like you did, that recording you did on Blue Note with the Three Sounds. There's a great record of Stanley with the Three Sounds, right? Playing standards. Well, you know, Stanley didn't play so many standards. He always did soul jazz stuff, which is great. But we wanted him to play more like that old school, just swing, right? And so it gave him an opportunity to do that. And then, so he was like, okay. And he was like, I thought he was going to lead. It was really that strong, right? I said, no, I'm not the leader. No, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I said, you know, we can pick whatever standards you like. I brought some, maybe you know, and blah, blah, blah. So we did the first tune and we were swinging like crazy because this swinging, we were really good swinging trio. And he comes up to me afterwards. He listens to the playback. He leans over and he says, "Can I get your phone number? I had a gig on Saturday. Are you free?"
Oh
So I
man,
started,
really? Oh, beautiful.
from this, like, I was scared, like, oh my God, to, yeah, I got the stamp of approval, and then it was cool. And then he started calling me for gigs.
Oh wow, really? Oh wow, man.
Yeah,
That's
sure.
so
So I
beautiful.
started playing with Stanley. Yeah. So it was, I saw great, that soulful jazz stuff. And then he played a few standards, and it was really fantastic.
That's incredible, man. Yeah.
And that's what,
Wow.
and Dwayne was on bass on that. Most of those gigs was Dwayne on bass. So
Yeah. That's so beautiful. Yeah, incredible, man. Yeah, you've done so much music. It's incredible.
different kinds of things. Yeah.
So much history there. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. There's a really nice video of me playing with Stanley, with Oscar Brown Jr. You remember him? He's an old singer from Chicago who even had his own TV show for a while, a jazz TV show.
Really? Oh wow, I have to check it out.
Back in, I think it was early 60s. The only recording of film we have, for example, of Scott LaFaro was on his show.
Okay.
I believe it was his show.
So check it out. Okay.
Maybe I'm not 100% right, but he had this show where he had jazz people and introducing really interesting jazz people on his program.
Oh wow.
Anyway, so he was a kind of a, first he was, I would say, more of a protest singer, kind of waking people up back in the 60s. Also, he wrote a lot of lyrics to songs like "Dat Dare" by Bobby Timmons. So he was the guy who was writing words to a lot of those kind of songs.
Yes. Oh, really?
So anyway, he was so there's this video with Dwayne and Bruce as the rhythm section, Stanley.
I have to check it out. Okay. Oh wow, I have to check it out. Wow, incredible.
Yeah. So anyway, so there's a lot of different interesting things that came out of that kind of world that I got to do.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's when you just not to take more of your time, Peter. I just wanted to ask you that your move to Europe.
Yeah.
What did that change for you musically? I mean, you said
everything.
Of course, yeah, like classical influences and everything. But like, just if you summarize it, like how do you see your development here?
Well, yeah, okay. When I came here because I met an Austrian woman, got married, and moved to Austria. It's like anybody, I guess, who leaves New York. Yeah. You find some other situation in life. So I came for that reason. And at first I was very sad. I was still playing with the Mingus band. Sue Mingus would still call me and, "Are you coming in 2 weeks, or are you going to be in New York?" And I was traveling more to New York then, more like 50-50. So I still had my connections in the beginning. Somebody here found me a job teaching. So I kind of got into the teaching world, which I really wasn't doing, a little bit private students, a little in New York, but not so much, right? I mean, I have an education degree, so that when I left university, I had a degree to teach. So I never really used it until I got here. So it just started with, 7 students I got. And so I could get, health insurance and some basic stuff.
Yeah, sure.
Great. Yeah. I'd never had health insurance before. So it was really great. Wow, health insurance, cool. So anyway, so I'm busy, teaching. I started doing that. And of course, little by little, I lost my connections to the New York guys. Not all, because Fred Wesley still calls me, blah, blah, blah. And still some New York guys will come through, and I do a few tours with some cats or whatever. But mostly I had to figure out something new. So back, this would be now 15 years ago, after I'd been here about 5 years, I would say, so about 5 years. Somebody approached me wanting me to move to Graz and teach at the university there.
Oh yeah, there. Yeah.
And I had just bought a house. My wife was pregnant. I'm like, oh man, with our second child. I'm like, oh, do I really want to move to Graz? But it pays like 3 times the money and all that. I'm like, oh great. Okay, so I had to think about it. So my students got word. And by this time I had a lot of students. By this time, a lot of the guys were like, oh man, you can't leave. You're the only guy we've ever had here in our history that can bring us all these experiences and show us all this stuff. So they went to the government of the local government here and said, can you give him a job that will keep him here? And it turned out they said yes, because the guys at the cultural department knew who I was. They had come to my concerts. They knew I was really helping a lot of people in the area. And they said, yes, absolutely, we want to keep him here. And so they basically made a job for me. So I had my regular teaching job, and they made a job for me. And this is how I started the Collective of Improvising.
I read about that. Ah, that's how this happened. Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So it's the CIA of Austria. So anyway, it started off like this. And, you know, I started with one ensemble. It was like a large ensemble, not a big band. Just, you know, weird instruments, including strings and different kinds of players. And it just kind of started like this. And then it just, every year I seem to have started a new group.
Yeah, right.
So now, after 15 years, I've had almost 15 different groups.
Wow. Yeah. That's incredible.
I write all the music, I arrange all the music, I rehearse all the groups. I'm the piano player in every group, and so on. So it's become this huge world that I can compose music for. I can, you know, rehearse all the time, anytime I want to play, plenty of people to play with, all these different kinds of groups, from duos, trios, quartets, into these different kinds of large ensembles. Like my newest recording that came out just a few months ago, which is 6 guitars and a rhythm section.
Man, here, I beat you here. I have a guitar orchestra with 27 guitars.
Well, that's a little bit more.
No, but seriously, I have with my students a guitar orchestra, like with 27 guitarists and a rhythm section. So
yeah, exactly. Same
I love this sounds, like, you know, like
yeah, it's an amazing sound.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the newest recording is with
beautiful. I have to check it out.
All these, I just put together these interesting groups like this. It's my idea, you know, get outside of the normal big band, or, you know, just try to find interesting ways of combining classical guys, you know, with the string quartet now, these different programs, you know. And, I wrote a full orchestra piece, you know, full 4 movements, whole thing.
Oh, really?
I just, you know, I like trying to, you know, combine ideas. Yeah, I've had this group together here because there's a number of African guys around here. So I had this group together for a while called the Kilimanjaro Dub and Rhythm Society. And it's like really Afro jazz. And one guy's from Senegal, one guy's from Ghana. We have a bass player from London, and then a couple Austrian guys and myself. We do this funky soul Afro jazz. So, I mean, really amazing group. So I don't know, it just has led me to a lot of other things. Like Pee Wee Ellis, for example, I mean, who just died also this year. He was living for many years in England. And so sometimes I would get calls that he would, you know, need a keyboard player for his stuff. And so I would go out on tour with him a little bit. And he started this group because he knew I loved African music and played with African musicians. And he said, I'm starting this new group. We're going to do some tours. It's going to be a big thing. And I said, okay, great. What is it? He said, well, it's called Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud, an African tribute to James Brown.
Mm.
So the idea was combining soul funk musicians with African stars.
Yeah.
So we had Tony Allen on drums, who invented the Afrobeat.
Yeah, sure.
No, he's from Nigeria. And we had, for example, Vusi Malasela from South Africa, who was the big protest singer, you know, was in jail many times, and who played at Mandela's, you know, inauguration. I mean, big guys, these are big stars, right? The Mahotella Queens. I mean, just the number of people we had, African guys, that would come into the group, and, you know, we did these huge tours, big giant festivals, you know, Lincoln Center, and just big things, right? So I got to do other kinds of things outside of the jazz world by being here, and then also creating a world of my own image with all the different kind of, in a sense, most of them were my students. Many of them have gone on to move to bigger cities and now become, you know, well known or whatever. They're doing great, a lot of them. So it's just, it's given me an opportunity to become more of a composer and arranger, I would say that. You know, in New York, I did, but not so much, you know. Now it's just kind of partially my life, right?
Yeah, that's incredible.
So that's the general
good,
thing going on here. And that's teach, beautiful. I have hundreds of students. You know, it's just gotten to be absurd. You know, I work, you know, 100 hours a week. It's just like endless. So
it's
it's
beautiful.
fun. I love. I still love music.
Yeah,
I love
that's
music.
important.
It's still. I love it more than before. It's just like grows on me. And
No,
I'm
I see also
66
the enthusiasm you have, when you're talking about it.
Yeah,
So
I just
beautiful.
I love to play. I love to write. I love to just be involved with people that have a dream of playing cool music and improvising. It's my world.
It's beautiful, man. Oh man, thanks so much, Peter, for sharing some of this stuff. Beautiful.
Well, I'm so glad you could
appreciate
ask
it.
me to do it. Yeah, it was fun. I enjoy talking about music and how important it is to all of us, especially now. With the COVID, craziness going on around the world. I mean, we need music can be what helps us, what gets us through this mess.
Yeah.
It brings people together, and that's what it's for.
Definitely.
Sharing our feelings and our connections. So.
Yeah.